I fell in love with the moon.
Look at your handsome face. Look at the face. Oh, how can you not love this face? Oh my God. I made this. I did this. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Princess, and as you can tell by the title, today's video is going to be about how my natural birth experience turned into me having an emergency C-section. So I've been meaning to film this video for a while, but I wasn't fully ready to talk about it, and I also really never took the time to sit down and actually reflect on it, and I needed to do that by myself and alone and really, come to terms with what happened. And I finally feel like I'm ready to talk about it in a video purpose, and hopefully, this can be something that is really healing for me. So I'm using this not only to, tell you guys about my experience, but also for myself to see, if it can be a bit of a therapeutic thing for me. Anyway, so on Friday, October 16th, Koda was 1 week and 5 days overdue, and he just wouldn't come out. I was showing no signs of labor or anything, and he was just really comfortable in there. So I went to the chiropractor by recommendation of my midwife, and she aligned my pelvis so that Koda would face more so down, because he was actually facing like the side of my pelvis, so his head wasn't like in the best position for labor. So I actually went to the chiropractor, had her, like do the things chiropractors do, crack your hips, all that, all the back stuff. And he actually was able to move more in a downward position instead of being to the side. So I thought that would help and, get labor started, but it did not. So my midwives decided to insert a Foley balloon catheter inside of my cervix, and a Foley catheter is originally supposed to empty your bladder, and it has a little balloon portion on the other side. So instead of it being something to empty my bladder, the balloon portion was inserted inside of my cervix and inflated with saline solution so that it would expand once it gets in there. And what that does is place pressure on your cervix to naturally dilate and open up your cervix more. Because if you did not know, you have to be 10 centimeters dilated in order to give birth, and I was only about 1 centimeter dilated. So the goal was to open my cervix more naturally so that I can, slowly progress and get closer to those 10 centimeters. So I went home that day hoping, that it would work, that my labor would jumpstart and everything. And I did get a couple contractions. They lasted for a couple hours. They were really super intense. And eventually they are supposed to become more regular and have a more of a pattern to them. But they were so irregular. They were coming, 10 minutes apart, then 7 minutes apart, then 14 minutes apart, then they would stop for an hour, then they would come again for another 10 minutes apart, 5 minutes apart. So they were all over the place, and eventually late that night, they just stopped altogether. So the next day, Saturday, October 17th, I went back to the birthing center to meet with my midwives, and at this time, the Foley balloon had already come out. So I'm going there thinking that I'm 3-4 centimeters dilated. She checks my cervix again, and I'm still only a fingertip dilated, which is still about 1 centimeter. So our next step was to do castor oil, and there's a big debate on castor oil for labor induction, but it's something that I myself was comfortable with and my midwives are comfortable with, so that's what we decided to try. And first of all, castor oil is the most disgusting thing I have ever had to ingest. Not really so much the taste, the taste isn't good, but it's bearable. It's more so the texture. It's this thick oil It's this thick oil sliding down your throat, and just now I just got nauseous because it's awful, honestly. But castor oil is a laxative, so what it's supposed to do is promote contractions, but it will also make you have diarrhea. But at this point, I was trying everything. I was doing nipple stimulation. I was taking a tincture of chicory root under my tongue every 15 minutes for 2 hours, and then every 30 minutes for 2 hours, and then I would give a rest for a couple hours, and that's also supposed to, promote contractions. I was taking walks around the park to walk him out. I was doing squats, and I was rubbing labor oils on my belly. I had my midwife actually put evening primrose oil on my cervix, and that is supposed to soften your cervix and help it thin out more. So I was trying everything. So the castor oil, I was like, well, let's do it. I'm trying to get him out, so let's do it. So that day, my contractions actually ramped up. They were a lot more intense than they had been the day before, which is saying a lot because they were really intense. They started to get more of a pattern to them, to where I decided that I needed to, talk to my midwife, and I showed her some screenshots of the contraction timer of the contractions I was getting. She was like, okay, you can come into the birthing centers, because I had to labor most of the time at home, because they don't want you to, come into the birthing center and then your labor stalls because you're not in a comfortable environment like your home. So I had to do, those 2 days at home of labor without my midwives. So we arrived at the birthing center around 7 p.m. on Saturday, October 17th. And we were both under the impression that, we're going to see Koda in a couple hours. No big deal. We're ready to have this baby. Let's do it. Let's get him here. Ready to push. I'm ready. Let's do it. So I just want to say we were completely wrong. And when I got to the birthing center, I was only 3 centimeters dilated. Instead of going home, I spent that night in the birthing center. We still did some walking around and everything, but there wasn't really much that we can do that night. So tried to get some sleep. Didn't really happen. So the next day, Sunday, October 18th, I took another round of castor oil, which was it was honestly worse than the first time. And we did some spinning babies technique, some side laying release, get him to come down, and with the help of gravity. I spent most of that day honestly walking around and squatting through the contractions and doing lunges through the contractions, but most of that time was spent in the labor pool. Midday on that Sunday, I started to get so discouraged because I had now been in labor for basically 3 days, and I was tired. I hadn't gotten much sleep. I was going through these contractions unmedicated, completely unmedicated. So my body was tired. I was mentally tired, mentally drained, physically drained. And at this point, I was like, well, I just want to go to the hospital because I can't do this anymore. I need an epidural. I thought I can do this natural thing, but I can't. I was really getting in my head and psyching myself out. But I, turned to my midwife and started talking to her, about everything that I was feeling. And she really encouraged me to keep going. And I, was listening to her, and I was like, you know what, you're right. I can do this. So I turned on a gospel playlist, and the song Close by Marvin Sapp came on. And if you don't know that song, it's basically about, when you are close to your goals and you're close to your plan in life and you're close to all these, positive things that you want, trials and tribulations and hardships are going to come because you are so close and you can do it. And you just have to, go through it and fight through it, because on the other side is, the thing that you want to accomplish, and you're gonna get through it if you just, I don't know. It's a really good song. You should check it out if you haven't heard it. But in that moment, I really just had to turn inward and really pull out a strength that honestly I didn't know I had, and really talk to myself and be like, you can do this. Like, there's no reason why you should give up. You can do this. And I really felt my parents, there with me. Both of my parents are deceased, but I felt them, you know, watching over me and encouraging me, and it became such a beautiful moment. Even though I was in so much pain, I'm not gonna lie, the pain was almost unbearable, but I just felt so protected and so, you know, encouraged and ready to keep going. So I got out of the labor pool, tried to go through more of the contractions in bed, also while trying to get some rest in between contractions, because like I said, I was exhausted. And so that night he still hadn't come. I was only 5 or 6 centimeters and my water had been broken for hours. So, you know, the midwives came up to me and we were talking about the fact that if he doesn't come in a couple hours, like midnight or something like that, then I would have to go to the hospital and give birth there. So I decided to not wait those couple hours, to just go ahead and go to the hospital, instead of, you know, waiting those hours, getting my hopes up, hoping that he would come, and then getting even more disappointed than I already was. So I just made the decision to go ahead and go to the hospital. Hopefully, you know, when I get there, get the epidural, get the Pitocin, and, you know, really get this baby out of me, honestly. We got to the hospital, and unfortunately I was told that I would have to have a C-section, which was something that I did not want. I didn't want to be in the hospital, let alone have a C-section. But, you know, there was really nothing I could do. He wasn't coming on his own. He wasn't coming naturally. So my only option was to have a C-section, which terrified me, because there was a story actually about a Black woman who went to the hospital, was planned to have a vaginal birth, and ended up having a C-section, and she ended up losing her life because of the negligence, one, of the doctors. And, you know, it's a sad fact and a sad reality that Black women are not taken care of in the hospitals. So I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to have a C-section. I didn't want to do anything because I was so afraid that, you know, these doctors wouldn't care about my Black ass life, and, you know, they wouldn't listen to me, or, you know, like stuff like that. So I was I'm not gonna lie, I was afraid. That's when I started to, you know, actually be afraid, and, you know, it's sunk in, like, whoa, you're in the hospital, and, you know, like, things are going wrong, and, you know, it scared me. But that was not even the scariest part of this whole thing. Not even an hour after arriving at the hospital, I'm gonna say like 40, like, we were not there long at all, Koda's heart rate started to drop, and I'm in the chair, you know, trying to answer questions from this nurse who keeps asking me the same questions over and over while I'm having contractions. Like, she sees me having contractions with no medication still, and she's asking me these questions over and over, like the same questions. I keep giving her the answers. She keep asking me the same questions. I have all these other nurses running around, you know, trying to prep me for a C-section. I have another nurse digging in my arm, trying to find a vein to draw blood, because I'm so dehydrated that she can't, you know, find a vein. But instead of, you know, stepping back and, you know, trying to at least get me hydrated, or you trying to slow down and take her time, she's digging in my fucking arm, trying to find a vein, and, you know, the other one's putting the IV in, and it's just so much chaos going on while I'm having contractions, while Koda's heart rate is beeping on the monitor. So I'm freaking out, you know. And the nurse finally, you know, put me on the gurney to bring me to the OR, but they start running, and I'm just like, whoa, you know, like, what's going on? Like, it's that bad to where you have to, you know, run me to the OR? So I'm like, you know, this is stuff I see in movies and TV shows. I've never been in a hospital, let alone, you know, an operating room. So they're like, you know, running me to the OR. My fiance is still in the other room trying to put on his gown and everything. And we get to the operating room, and it's exactly like it is on TV. I know, you know, it's like common sense, like, duh, that's what it looks like. But I've never been in an operating room, like I said. So all this white and these bright lights and these machines and the beeping, it's so fucking scary to me. It's like my worst fears come true. And they wouldn't even let my fiance be in the room because it was an emergency C-section and I had to be put under. And so I hear him outside, you know, saying, baby, I'm here. And, you know, you know, just reassuring me that he's there. They finally put me on the table, and you know, he put the mask over my face and told me to, you know, take deep breaths. Next thing I know, I am waking up in the what is it called, the room that you go to after, you know, you have a surgery or whatever. And I have no idea where I am, why I'm there. My brain is so foggy. You know, I see all these nurses or whatever, and you know, I'm in a room that I don't recognize. It wasn't until I looked over and saw him laying there, just there and real and, you know, here. And at that moment, all of it was worth it. All of the fear and the 3 days of pain and the, you know, all of everything that we had to go through that was so tough and so, you know, emotionally draining and physically draining at that moment, just, it didn't matter. Like, he was here, and he was, you know, my baby was here. And it's a moment that, you know, I will think about for the rest of my life, for the rest of his life. And, you know, something really positive that came out of this whole experience. So after we were in that room for a while, they moved us to, you know, the room that we would be staying in, and we ended up being in the hospital for about 4 days. I ended up having to have a blood transfusion for me being severely anemic, and you know, I just had surgery, so they wanted to make sure, you know, I get some iron in me. And Koda had to stay as well because he was experiencing some jaundice, so he had a couple different tests to, you know, make sure that that wasn't an issue. And we finally were discharged about 4 days later. Yeah, so that whole experience honestly was so scary and so, like I said, traumatizing. Like, it solidified my fear of hospitals. At first, I guess you could say my fear was a little bit irrational, but no, now I am terrified of hospitals. And I feel like I have a good reason to be. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for the story. I mean, he is here, right here, asleep. Here he is, my little sleepy baby, 6 weeks old. Look at him, he's like so perfect. But yeah, like, I look at his face, I'm like, damn, you know, like, it was worth it. Like, everything that I've been through was worth it. So I just love him so much. But thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.